could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello everyone, today we're meeting Dana Shamas. She is an executive health and wellness coach. Hello Dana, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Anna. How are you?
I'm great. So let's start a conversation by diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. What led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Um, let's see. I mean, it's been a long journey. I always say that I've lived many lives in one. And mostly it's about following my curiosity and things that make me happy and excited. The journey didn't really start that way, a little bit, but I started off in investment banking in New York and London. And, there were definitely some passions in there, but what I saw is that what people had the hardest time with was really finding happiness and being happy. And I knew I was going to have to do more than what I was doing to figure out what that was for me. And so I followed something that I'd always been excited about, which is international development in Serbia and Croatia. And I had a fantastic time. It was an amazing experience. But there was no yoga there. And I had already developed a pretty strong yoga practice through my college and time after college. And so the stars aligned. I was between contracts. I had a contract that ended, and then my other contract got delayed unexpectedly. So I had exactly 30 days. I didn't have a home. I didn't have a job to go to. And so I looked at yoga teacher trainings, and it happened to be, as the cosmos would have it, the Jivamukti yoga training in Europe started the next day. So I hopped on a train and I was able to join that class. And that training was an immersive training and was for 29 days. So literally exactly the time frame I had available. And so that's what started me into this path of a teacher and kind of a teacher in this realm, even though that wasn't the reason why I went, right? Like I didn't have a driving desire to teach yoga. I literally just wanted to develop my own practice because I had 0 yoga studios I could go to. But I really discovered after that time that I really wanted to do more entrepreneurship and create businesses that were aligned to help people and help the planet, and looked at more than just making money. So how could I bring this idea of happiness and how you make yourself happy by following a business passion and entrepreneurship? And so I did social entrepreneurship program at UC Berkeley and got my MBA, and was also another fantastic life experience. And put me kind of in this epicenter of food and entrepreneurship, which is really where my heart was helping people with food and how they eat and how you spark that and make that easier for people. After living in Europe, a daily life of healthy vegetables and knowing who my farmer was and where my food came from. Croatia and Serbia, they're very small countries. So, you're not very distant from your food, is what I found. Not like here in the US, where most people are very, very far removed from food and from where their food comes from. So having that experience gave me a whole different perspective of life and how you could live healthy and have more balance and play and joy, as well as healthy food and a vibrant lifestyle. And so even in San Francisco, even in this epicenter of health and wellness entrepreneurship, I actually still found that to be very elusive. This culture of really easeful joy of life. And And so I came back to Houston because my family's here. My grandparents were getting older. I wanted to help my mom with them as they aged. And I was hopeful that here in the South, we had more of this easeful joy of life, right?
Yeah.
And when I came back, I found that really wasn't true, that Houston's a very big city, that people are very busy, and they really needed more help with that. And so after several entrepreneurial experiences in the health and wellness field here in Houston that were not ideal, um, I ended up going back into yoga, teaching yoga more full time. And then I ended up opening up my own wellness studio. And really, what catapulted me onto this journey into really the unknown realms and the unseen realms is breath work. So I was introduced to breath work a few years before I opened my own studio. And from the first session, it gave me the experience, like an actual embodied experience of oneness that my yoga and my meditation practices all talked about all the time. And that you got like just a glimpse of, just a glimpse of that space in meditation, just a glimpse of that in Shavasana and yoga. This breathwork practice that I was introduced to gave me a full bodied, like absolute experience that was sustainable. And so I knew that was a practice that would transform my life, that did transform my life, and really was the fastest path to transformation that I have found still today. So breath work, even though I don't necessarily practice it all the time in the cathartic way that I found it, it is still a very essential part of all my coaching practices because, if you're not breathing, you're really not living. You're really not processing emotion. You're really not processing life. And you need all of that to fully experience joy, to fully experience bliss, to really know what you desire and what your passion is and what it feels like. You have to have access to all of that, which means you have to have the ability to process emotion and process energy well, right? And, here we are very, very good at suppressing and repressing emotion and energy.
Oh, that's beautiful. You
Yeah.
had such a long journey of first discovering yourself and what's best for you. And with all the practices that you've been through, you now know how it feels like. And now you can teach others how it's supposed to feel like in order for them to process all their emotions and come to this understanding, to that place where they see themselves for who they are and what they want. And like you mentioned, breath work and meditation is a big part of this mindfulness practice that we should incorporate on a daily basis, every one of us. And we have access to it. And only if we really, prioritize our mental and physical health enough to do it consistently, that's where we're going to see the result for ourselves. What are your thoughts on making that as a daily practice? What would you suggest people to start with for those who never did it in the past?
A short 15-minute breathwork practice. So that's actually one of the foundations of what I work with when I work with people, because everyone has 15 minutes, right? Everyone can carve out 15 minutes. And so if you can carve out 15 minutes to process your emotions and process energy or things that you are holding on to on a daily basis, it means that things are more easeful in your life. You have more capacity. You're more gentle with yourself. You're more gentle with others. There's less like and stress and like control. You don't have to control so much because you have the capacity to take in and move with what life presents you.
Yes, definitely. In 15 minutes, it's not a lot. Every one of us can find this time either in the morning or during the day or even before they go to sleep. It's very essential time that we need to dedicate to ourselves because, like you said, if we suppress certain emotions and feelings, they get stuck in our body and we don't realize how, it's not beneficial for us because it could just burst out in the situation we don't want to, right?
Yeah, and so I call that being reactionary. And so when you find yourself in a reactionary place, where things just set you off, or you have an emotional outburst that is significantly larger than the situation warrants, then you know you have unprocessed emotion. You know you have things that are suppressed and repressed. And going to therapy is great and talking it through is great, but you also have to have the energetic component of really letting that energy move and leave your system and integrate is what I call it. But yeah, when you're sharp or reactionary, then like that's your system telling you, oh, you have some things you need to go look at. You have some stuff that you need to process.
Right, because we always find ourselves, interacting with others, and whatever is being said could trigger certain emotion within you. And then you start blaming somebody else for that. But really, what is inside of you, you're in control of that. If you feel something is off, you have to work through that. You have to let it go and release first, because then you're going to be in control of how you feel and interact with others, and you're at peace.
And free.
Yeah.
Most of us spend lots of our life trying to avoid situations that we think are going to trigger us, or topics, or conversations, or environments that bring up emotions we don't like, right? But if you've integrated those experiences, if you've processed those emotions, if you're in that place of really working through what comes up within you, then you're free, right? Then you can handle whatever situation in life comes, good or bad. Not all of it's going to be good. Just because you're processing and you're aware and you're on this journey, life still happens. There's still stuff comes up, but the way that you work with it changes. Your process changes, your state of calmness changes, even if you don't like it. Even if it's unpleasant, even if it's something that you don't want to deal with, you have the tools and the capacity to process it with more ease and grace and understanding.
Right. And we just need to see it for what it is and not being emotional reactive towards that certain situation or person. I always look at it as a certain lesson that life brings to you. You just need to learn from it, and maybe it will guide you through your own journey. It's just a different way of looking at the same thing that you experience every day. And when you at that place where you are at peace and nothing triggers you, that's more clear for you to see what's happening.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, you mentioned how food is very important in our life and what we eat, the sources of food. We need to be very mindful of what we integrate in our diet because it affects not only our physical health, but emotional or mental health as well. And I just want to elaborate more on what certain types of food you would suggest people to kind of look at and be mindful of integrating in their own diet.
So every body is different. So your body is different from somebody else's body. So the number one thing is tuning in to what your body needs and what your body feels good having and processing. And there are a million different things out there. All these people have written all kinds of things about what works for them, right? But you have to figure out what works for you. And 9 times out of 10, that's a trial and error process. And it's also a process of listening to your intuition and listening to your body and really being honest about how you feel when you eat certain things and how you don't. and being willing to shift and change. Actually, this morning, I just had a conversation with a yoga client, a longtime yoga practitioner. And he was saying how his wife was trying to get him to eat less red meat. And I was like, ooh, this is a conversation I can get into. But one of the things that came up was if you've always eaten a certain kind of way, and in this particular way, he was, red meat was something that he loved. He wanted to have it all the time. I was like, if you've only ever had red meat all the time, 5 days a week or what have you, you have no idea what your body feels like if you don't eat it. Right. So, like, that's usually for most people, those are eye-opening things. How does your body feel if you don't eat sugar? How do you know how sugar affects you if you've only ever eaten sugar every single day? Right? Same with fats, same with different kind of categories of things. Caffeine is another big one. If you, for the past 15 years, have always had a cup of coffee or 4 cups of coffee in the morning, how do you know how your body feels and functions without it until you have a month or 2 months of something different? So, the easiest way to figure out what works for your body is really be observant and honest. And that means you're going to have to try different things. And I always tell people to work with their intuition and kind of work with what their body is already telling them, so if you're getting signals from the world around you that certain things should change, then try it and see what it feels like.
No, definitely. And we most of the time don't listen what our body tells us. If something is not feeling right, it's just an indicator for us to look deeply into what exactly that might be, either certain type of feeling or certain food that we're eating. Maybe we should experiment with trying different types of food. And again, we wouldn't know unless we try, and we have to kind of experiment and be curious of what would feel better for ourselves. And every one of us has that gut feeling, that intuition that guide us. And we just need to quiet our busy mind to the point where we'll listen closely to what our body's telling us. And we have that wisdom available. And with us realizing what could be the source that's given us maybe not that easy feeling, maybe we can eliminate that from our diet. Because I also believe there addiction in food as well, because we could be continue taking certain type of food to the point where we just don't realize that we're really addicted to that substance, right? Because maybe it started a few years ago and now you just like it became like a habit for us. We just keep taking it without even realizing why we're doing that, and it's hard to break that pattern.
I mean, there are also chemical components to it, right? So when sugar is a really easy example, right? When you eat sugar on a regular basis, you are feeding certain microbes that produce certain kinds of chemicals in your gut, right? They really like sugar and they want more sugar because that's what they like. And that actually produces a chemical, right? And so you feel like you need sugar because the chemical components in your system are actually driving that craving, even as much as the emotional. So breaking those things, like breaking a habit, it actually changes the chemical makeup of your system. Does that make sense?
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
And because we keep feeding the same addiction with the addiction as well. And with us trying different things, again, will show us how that was a habit and we actually don't need it and we don't feel good taking it, but rather it was just certain pattern that we were in, and now we see it for ourselves. But we have to distance ourselves from that substance in order to understand.
100%. And then you have to be aware and conscious, right? Like, what else is coming up? Why did you go have the sugar? Why was that an addiction in the first place? Is it just physical or were there other things? Like, what else did sugar do for you? there are all kinds of reasons why we have addictions, right? And usually they're there because we have an unmet need. And so what need do you need to meet within yourself so that you don't need that thing that you're addicted to? And food is really a very socially acceptable addiction, honestly.
Right. Yes, for
So,
us, it's normal. It became a norm, and nobody even questioning that. And with a lot of with the access to fast food and the sugars and everything, like I don't know, Pepsi, Coke, whatever you name it, you can buy easily, no restrictions. But in the end of the day, is it really healthy for you? How do you feel? Why would you choose to take that certain a beverage or type of food, right? Again, what is driving your choice really? What is the intention behind it? Like, why would you want to feel this way? What else could bring you that type of feeling instead of taking that substance, right?
yes. But
All
that
of these
takes
questions.
space and bandwidth and awareness, so, and those are all gifts that you give yourself in this world that's really busy and people feel pulled in a million directions. It's really takes a lot of courage and a lot of consciousness to choose something different and really choose what is healthy and good for you. So I really honor people who really make that choice, and a lot of recognition that is, that's an amazing choice to make for yourself.
Right, but I feel like it comes back to our own self-love and self-care. How willing are you to take care of yourself, right? Because all of those choices, out of your own understanding that it's good for you, and I'm nourishing my body, my mind with all of this positive type of practices and the good source foods that I'm eating, whole foods. And also, I'm doing it intentionally. I know that I'm in charge of my own life and I'm responsible for it. And I'm giving myself the best, really. And I think first we have to start with ourselves before we give to others. And that's not really selfish, because a lot of people mistake it by, you always self-centered, thinking about yourself, but this is what you should focus first on, your own, wellness, before you can be at the place where it's just overflown and you can share it from the place where it's just unconditional, and it's going to be easier in the end. But without you giving yourself time for your own wellness, there's a problem coming back to you, because you feel burnt out and you feel like you're stressed and you need to recharge. All that energy should come in before you can give more. And I feel like with us prioritizing and making it a daily habit, because we're all creatures of habit, right? If we establish that in our daily routine, and it just becomes our second nature, it's just who we are in the end. Don't you think so?
I think that's a very ideal world, right? And I'm very fortunate. Like, I'm very blessed in my life and the choices that I get to make and the choices I have made, right? And but I'm very cognizant that the modern world is very busy and people feel pulled in a million directions and have a lot of responsibilities. And so yes, I think prioritizing your own self-care and really taking time to learn your own energy and your own heart and your own purpose. Obviously, I feel that's super valuable because that's what I dedicate my life towards. But I also realize that people have a lot of other things and other people's purposes are different, right? And so finding what works for you is really the most important. And so what your process is and how you show yourself self-love, that's unique to you, actually. And like what your system needs and what your body needs and what your spirit needs, right? You have to figure that out for yourself. And then you have to give it to yourself, right? And that is the ultimate self-care practice. And so that looks different for everybody. You know, for some people that is quiet time. For some people that's actually being out with other people, you know, and being surrounded by community that's supported and uplifting. You know, there's all different kinds of ways that people recharge and ignite their spirit and soul, right? Sometimes they need inspiration and they need to be in nature, or they need to be around art or music, or they need movement, right? Or they need sound. And so figuring out kind of what those things are for you and giving themselves, really making sure that you give yourself those things on a regular basis is super important. And some people are really habit driven, and some people need that structure of doing it every single day, but some people aren't, right? Some people need the more fluid freedom to be curious, to do this today and do that tomorrow. But the consistency is coming back to your own energy and your own truth, right? And being honest about what that is, you know?
Yeah. No, definitely. We have to be honest first to understand what exactly our spirit is calling for. Be observant of what makes me feel good and joyful and what drives my passion, and feed myself more with that, right?
Yes. Yes, that's brilliant. Can you just imagine if everybody in your life did that?
Wow, the world will change, actually.
The world will change. Yes.
Yeah, and it's possible. But again, we all have to focus on what matters. I feel like it's a lot of distraction nowadays, and we just, like you mentioned, pulled in a different direction. But finding that place and giving ourselves what we need is important. And every one of us can find what's working best for themselves. So we need to stay curious and try and experiment and just really have that understanding. And hopefully we will, shift to go into the right direction of our own well-being. Because that not only affects us, but I always say it's a ripple effect. With me doing it for myself, that inner work, right? I'm also reflecting it back to the people around me. So it is a ripple effect.
100%. When you can be kind to yourself and gracious to yourself, it's absolutely effortless to be gracious to everybody else and give them space and honoring who they are, and that they are trying very hard to do their very best, So yeah, that allows everything else to unfold with much more ease and joy.
Yes. And I'm so glad we had time to meet and discuss this today. Thank you for your thoughts and wisdom. For those who would like to connect with you, how can they find you?
You can find me on my website, www.danashamas.com. And all my information is up there. I have a free 30-minute consultation that you can sign up to chat with me anytime. But I also have one-to-one coaching, group coaching program, and a regular monthly alignment circle. So you can connect with me all kinds of different ways. But I encourage you to start the practice for wherever feels good for you.
Yes, thank you so much. I'll include everything in the show notes as well. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I hope you enjoy your day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I hope you enjoy your day too, Anna.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.